Betrayed by her own empire and abandoned by the crown prince for another woman, the princess was preparing to vanish into the shadows of oblivion. But fate struck back. In her darkest hour, the man everyone believed dead rose from the ashes of war, the Grand Duke Edwin Blender. Their chance encounter in the slums of the capital turned into a fateful oath. The former exile had not returned for titles or glory. He had returned for her. Now he is her shadow, her sword, and her most dangerous weapon. His loyalty borders on madness, and his gaze promises to reduce to ashes anyone who dared to hurt her. Is this belated redemption, or the beginning of a bloody coup? Watch until the end to see how the victim becomes the executioner and love transforms into perfect vengeance. The capital of the empire bathes in the rays of the morning sun, concealing behind its facade of grandeur and the bustle of market squares the shadows of impending change. The rhythm of the city remains unchanged, while within the walls of noble mansions, history is being made, hidden from the eyes of ordinary citizens. Through the lancet windows opens a view of a world that may soon tremble from the fateful choice of a single soul. The lady's distant gaze betrays the weight of her thoughts, for even in the silence of her own chambers, she finds no longed-for peace. A respectful maid tries to break this trance, offering the usual ritual of care. But her mistress's anxiety runs too deep for ordinary comfort. Accepting the offering, she seems to don a mask of indifference, hiding behind flawless manners the storm brewing in her heart. But a sudden flash of memory pierces her consciousness, forcing her to freeze in anticipation of an inevitable collision with the shadows of the past. Every breath comes with difficulty as scenes of the one she swore to forget forever come alive before her eyes again and again. The image of the crown prince and his new favorite dazzles with its inappropriate luxury, piercing the lady's heart with the sharp needle of betrayal and humiliation. His gaze, once promising protection, now breathes only the icy arrogance of a man clothed in unlimited power. Beside him triumphs the one whose innocent smile hides a predatory grin and the triumph of victory over a defeated rival. Left alone, the lady tries on the role of a ghost, preparing to vanish or be reborn in the flames of her own pain. In this silence, an oath is born, one capable of shattering the foundations of the empire and turning former devotion into cold, calculated vengeance. The roots of this tragedy stretch back to the days when innocent childhood vows seemed as unshakable as the granite vaults of the imperial palace. The years had turned sincerity into duty and shared dreams into a cold distance that could not be bridged even at arm's length. But betrayal finally severed those threads when he found solace in the arms of another, leaving his true companion to languish in the shadow of oblivion. The bitterness of a rejected heart crystallizes into cold resolve, for in these halls, the price of loyalty has always been measured only in political gain. His smug gaze pierces straight through her, reminding her that in this Game of Thrones, feelings are merely currency for those born to rule. Every word he cast at her sounds like a sentence, finally burning the bridges to the past where they had once been one. The gold and light of imperial balls only highlight more brightly the emptiness in the souls of those forced to dance on the edge of the abyss under the gaze of hundreds of eyes. He embodies the unshakable power of the dynasty, unaware that the ice of former prosperity is beginning to crack beneath his feet. Now she is merely a bystander in her own home, clothed in silk and dignity that will become her only shield in the coming storm. The wheels of the carriage carry her away from illusions, into a world where the old rules no longer apply, and revenge becomes the sole meaning of existence. The die is cast. A new chapter begins, where every action will be dictated not by love, but by cold calculation and a thirst for justice. The noise of the capital streets envelops her, creating the illusion of ordinary life in which the lady can dissolve and momentarily forget the palace intrigues. Yet even here, among the crowded half-timbered houses, she carries on her shoulders an invisible crown of obligations and bitter memories. The attentive gaze of her maid catches every fleeting change in her mistress's mood, trying to find the line between her calm and the growing despair. The image of her rival, whose garish luxury seems a mockery of true nobility, rises in her memory like a poisonous reminder of the injustice committed. Simple loyalty collides with the lady's icy resolve, and this contrast awakens in the servant's soul only a vague tremor before an unknown future. A gentle touch is meant to soothe another's anxiety, though the lady's own heart has long since become an impregnable fortress, ready for a long siege. A shadow of doubt falls upon the shoulders of her faithful companion, who realizes that the old world has collapsed and something terrifying and great is being erected upon its ruins. In her eyes, there is no longer room for tears, only pure, crystallized will directed toward a goal whose price has yet to be determined. Memories of days when the sun shone brighter and the grass beneath her feet seemed softer are now perceived as frames from someone else's long-forgotten life. She bids farewell to the girl she once was, leaving her fragile dreams where they belong, in the irreversible past. Reality dictates a different rhythm, forcing her to step firmly across the cobblestones toward the inevitable finale of this prolonged drama. Strangers' glances and whispers behind her back become mere background noise for the one who has firmly decided to change the rules of the game in which she had been assigned the role of victim. She knows that a trap may lurk around every corner, yet her proudly raised chin reveals her as the true ruler of her own fate, and even the sincere anger of a devoted man cannot melt the ice that has encased the lady's soul, the lady who has resolved to go all the way, regardless of the consequences. For beyond the horizon of the familiar world awaits not only retribution, but the chance to gain true freedom from the shackles of her own name. The maid's sincere curiosity momentarily shatters the ice of formality, returning them to simple human warmth amid the bustle of the noisy market. The lady's soft half-smile seems like a blessing, a rare glimpse of the light she so carefully hides from the eyes of high society. The joy of a close person echoes quietly in the lady's heart, reminding her that even in the world of political intrigue, there is room for sincere devotion. This brief moment of unity becomes their shared secret, a small shield against the storm already beginning to swirl around their fates. But fate reminds them of itself with an embossed seal, hiding beneath heavy wax words capable of forever changing the balance of power in the Empire. News of movements on the borders of Gios carries with it the scent of impending war and the clang of steel, heralding the end of an era of fragile truce. Every piece of equipment, every crate of provisions is a brick in the foundation of a strategy that leaves no room for chance or weakness. The grim vaults of the Citadel prepare to receive those who dare challenge the established order for the sake of a phantom hope for vengeance. In the silence of her chambers, she once again finds herself alone with the quiet that weighs heavier on her shoulders than any armor. In her gaze, a plan crystallizes, where every movement is calculated and every emotion subordinated to the highest goal, to survive and to win. The touch of cold wood returns her to reality, where old secrets demand their hour to finally be revealed. The mask of flawless nobility settles once more upon her face, hiding behind it an abyss ready to swallow any careless opponent. The crack of breaking wax sounds like a gunshot, marking the beginning of active moves from which there will be no turning back. The lines of the letter fall upon the fertile soil of her design, confirming her boldest suspicions and opening new horizons for maneuver. The sheet of paper, now a catalyst for change, slowly lowers as if counting down the last seconds of her former peaceful life. She accepts this challenge, allowing the winds of change to lift her and carry her toward the fate she now writes with her own hand. The warmth of a fleeting smile softens the cold calculation of her plans, for in this long game, Lily's loyalty is the only constant she can rely upon. This gesture seals their unspoken alliance more firmly than any imperial oath, uniting two different destinies in a single determination to withstand the coming storm. Yet even in the darkest times, there is room for genuine surprise when the lady lifts the veil of her true intentions before her faithful helper. They continue their way through the labyrinths of the capital, where behind every turn lurk not only trading stalls but also ears hungry for rumors. Detachment once again claims her features while her mind analyzes every step, turning an ordinary walk into a chess game with fate itself. The city lives its own life, unaware that among the crowd glides the one whose next move will make the walls of the imperial palace tremble. The icy calm in her eyes is more frightening than open rage, testifying that the path back has been irrevocably cut off by the will of the empire itself. Every movement she makes is filled with the dignity of an exile, her status emphasized by the gleam of the armor of her retinue, which has become both guard and escort. Whispers behind her back give way to cautious glances from those accustomed to reading signs of coming upheaval in the gait and gestures of noble persons. With a single detail, a single movement, she restores her flawless image, allowing not a single crack to appear on the facade of her unshakable greatness. In this gaze, there is no longer any plea for mercy, only the promise that everyone who once stood in her way will sooner or later pay in full. The gleam of naked steel draws a line under her past, proclaiming the beginning of a war in which her only ally will be her own shadow. The serenity of the walk is shattered in an instant when the chaos of the streets bursts into the lady's personal space, forcing her loyal subjects to draw their blades. The clash of steel against stone sounds like the first stroke of a funeral bell for her former life, announcing the start of open hunting. From the shadows of the alleys, death itself materializes, its eyes burning with madness and a thirst for the blood of those who once considered themselves untouchable. But the predator quickly becomes the prey when the steel of her defenders finds a breach in his fury, staining the cold cobblestones with hot blood. In the killer's fading gaze, one can read belated realization. He had not attacked a defenseless aristocrat, but fate itself clothed in silk. Even on the threshold of the abyss, he tries to finish his bloody work, driven only by hatred and the orders of those who remained in the shadows. The defenders' close ranks, turning into a living shield, while the air around them grows thick with the heavy smell of iron and inevitable resolution. The final breath drowns in the noise of battle, leaving only the echo of unspoken threats and secret conspiracies that led him to this dead end. Amid the whirlwind of violence, the lady remains an unshakable pillar of calm, as if death itself cannot touch the hem of her flawless dress. Not a shadow of horror reflects on her face, only the calculating interest of a person who knows that this incident is merely a pawn in a much larger game. She absorbs every sound and gesture, turning the horror she has endured into fuel for her future revenge, which will be far more refined than this crude attack. The final chord of violence fades, leaving behind only a corpse and a silence that feels heavier than any scream. The storm has passed, but the world around her will never be the same again. The masks have been torn away, and the true face of the Empire emerges through the mist of the capital's streets. This bloody line, drawn in the dust of the alley, becomes the official beginning of her ascent to the top, where there is no place for pity. The brutal skirmish subsides as suddenly as it began, leaving only the heavy breathing of the victors and the ashes of a failed plot. Amid the wreckage of the capital's tranquility, she rises like a silent reproach while her guard completes the cleanup, severing the last threads of threat. The shadows of the past and present intertwine into an inseparable knot, forcing her to realize, behind every attack stands someone whose ambitions know no bounds. But chaos grants not only danger, but also chance encounters capable of overturning the course of history with a single short, piercing glance. The icy mask cracks when she recognizes in the newcomer's features something that makes her heart skip a beat in anticipation of a new storm. In this sudden contact, a bond is born that cannot be broken, and old vows rise from the depths of memory, burning with their suddenness. Truth breaks through the veil of years, freezing time itself in this fateful moment of a long-awaited yet terrifying reunion. His voice, full of hidden bitterness, sounds like an echo from another life, dragging her back into a reality where old debts demand immediate payment. He hides his gaze, as if afraid to reveal the abyss of feelings he has kept secret through all these long, agonizing years of separation. His appearance, wrapped in an aura of nobility and sorrow, contrasts with the innocence of the flowers, emphasizing the tragedy of the exiled hero who has returned to his native lands. Now she understands. Salvation has come from the hands of the one she considered lost forever, and this new variable changes all her carefully laid plans. The weight of past mistakes settles upon his shoulders like an invisible burden, compelling him to seek redemption in the eyes of the one he failed to protect. Every word of apology comes with difficulty, for a chasm of years of separation and unspoken words now lies between them, a chasm that has become his personal curse. His fingers involuntarily clench, betraying the inner storm he desperately tries to conceal behind a facade of humility and submission to fate. A silent question freezes in her gaze, and the realization of his true identity pierces her mind sharper than any blade, resurrecting images from the distant past. This chance meeting beneath the stone vaults becomes a turning point, where the paths of the exiled man and the devoted bride intertwine once more, defying the laws of the Empire. She searches his features for traces of the youth she once knew, but sees only a stranger whose arrival promises new upheavals to her already fragile world. His figure, wrapped in twilight, seems part of the night itself, guarding secrets that were never meant to surface. Ancient tomes preserve the truth about forbidden knowledge and family curses that bind their houses with bonds stronger than blood or steel. The shadow of a smile on his lips conceals knowledge of the impending finale, where every actor has been assigned a role in this bloody spectacle of vengeance. She understands. To survive, she will have to peer into the abyss this man offers, even if it costs her the last remnants of her humanity. The time has come to tear the veil from the secrets of the Jose Academy and those who pull the strings of power while hiding behind the grandeur of the imperial crown. Ahead lie only the glow of fires and the clash of swords, for true ascension begins only when the old world burns to ashes in the flames of truth. The gaze of the Grand Duke Edwin Blender pierces the darkness, carrying reflections of the battles from which he returned to reclaim his place in the hierarchy of the Gyos Empire. His return is no accident, but a calculated maneuver meant to shatter the illusion of peace that the imperial court has so long maintained. The lady studies his features, trying to comprehend how a man believed dead could rise from the ashes and appear before her in her hour of greatest need. The rigid armor around the Duke's heart cracks as he looks at the woman whose name had been his only beacon through the endless night of exile. Even in the most dramatic moment, fate offers an ironic reminder that beneath titles and ranks still hide the children whose paths diverged many years ago. Their trio against the backdrop of the cityscape looks like a challenge to reality itself, uniting aristocratic grace, sincere loyalty, and a hidden threat. The bustle of the capital continues its frantic pace, unaware that in its very heart an alliance has just been forged, one capable of turning the gold of palaces into ashes. An accidental touch burns hotter than open flame, bringing back forgotten feelings of safety and unspoken trust. She realizes that the Duke's appearance is both a gift and a trial, demanding a new strategy in her fight against the Crown Prince. His admission of his own weakness only underscores the incredible strength of will that allowed him to cross the boundaries of the impossible for this meeting. A shadow of doubt falls across her path, forcing her to wonder, what price will fate demand for the return of the one who should have remained only a legend? She is no longer that helpless little girl, and her decision to accept the Duke's help is dictated not by love, but by the icy necessity of survival. In this clash of two wills, a new power is born, one capable of rewriting the laws of mana and ranks that the Academy holds so dear. Now that the pieces are positioned and allies secured, she is ready to deliver her first strike against those who dared to rob her of her future. Against the backdrop of the serenely splashing fountain, the Duke offers not mere help, but devotion that has survived years of oblivion and shadows. Even the stern warrior loses his grandeur before the woman who was once his only anchor, allowing a moment of sincerity to illuminate their dark present. This gesture is a wordless vow. He promises to become her shadow and her sword, so that no more tears will ever touch her cheeks because of those who rule in the palace. In his gaze, there is no longer room for the coldness of war, only a thirst for redemption and the hope that in the new world they will build, there will be space for their shared happiness. I will do everything in my power. The Duke's words become the final brick in the foundation of their alliance, one that will soon make the Empire tremble. Resolve fills her heart. She is no longer an exile seeking salvation. She is a player who has just received the strongest piece on the chessboard. While the Crown Prince revels in his power and new love, he has no idea that vengeance has already taken shape and bears a name. This is good news, she whispers. The time for tears is over. The time has come for the story she will write with the blood of her enemies. Her path leads to the top, and now no force in Gaios can stop the woman who stands behind the resurrected Grand Duke. The sincerity of the Grand Duke pierces her more deeply than any steel, making her heart beat in unison with his oath as the shadows of the past slowly retreat before the light of this unexpected loyalty. Even in the features of this battle-hardened warrior, a boyish shyness emerges. For now, he is protecting not the Empire's borders, but the only woman who preserved his humanity. The city continues its bustling life, unaware that behind this quiet corner, the outcome of the coming political storm has just been decided. But knightly duty knows no mercy, and the call of duty once again tears Edwin from his fleeting peace, forcing him back into the role of the crown's impassive shield. The Duke's gaze instantly loses its warmth, becoming sharp and cold like a blade ready to strike anyone who stands in the way of his new purpose. His subordinates can barely keep up with the changes in their lord's mood, sensing the aura of overwhelming power emanating from him, an aura that has only grown heavier. The formidable presence of the Grand Duke inspires awe, for behind him now stands not only the law of the Gaios Empire, but also a personal will as unshakable as granite. He walks past like the very embodiment of fate, leaving no doubt that every action is now subordinated to the grand design of his lady. Memories of past battles and blood spilled on scorched lands only strengthen his resolve to turn this world to ashes for her triumph. Past and present merge in a single surge. The one who survived the hell of war will not fear palace intrigues, becoming the most terrifying nightmare for his lady's enemies. His comrades can only guess what force has awakened in their lord this fierce zeal, transforming the cold tactician into a devastating hurricane of vengeance. The Grand Duke's parting glance is filled not with the bitterness of farewell, but with anticipation of a new chapter in which he will no longer be a mere pawn on the Empire's chessboard. The bewilderment of his loyal adjutant only highlights the strangeness of the moment, for his commander's usual coldness has been replaced by something frighteningly human and alive. In the shadow of Gaios' ancient arches, a silent understanding is born. Old orders no longer hold power over the one who has found his true lady. The subordinate's emotional outburst breaks against the Duke's icy calm, whose resolve is now as unshakable as the walls of the ancient Azenka fortress. In that gaze lies a promise. He will carry out everything that was planned, and the price the capital will pay for their exile will be immeasurably high. Every word of the oath echoes in his mind, becoming the invisible vector that directs his steps straight into the heart of the political storm. All will be as you wish. The silent promise freezes on his lips, sealing the alliance that will soon make thrones tremble with fear. As the sun slowly sets beyond the horizon, painting the mansion walls in blood gold tones, a plan for perfect vengeance begins to ripen within these halls. Returning to her chambers, the lady sees in the delicate bouquet not merely flowers, but a symbol that the seeds of her influence have already sprouted their first lethally beautiful shoots. Touching the fragile blossoms feels almost like a caress, yet in this gesture hides the steel grip of a predator luring its prey out of the shadows. She inhales the scent of coming change, realizing that behind her now stands a force capable of turning her pain into an elegant weapon against her enemies. The flowers are merely a fleeting decoration, foretelling the storm that will wipe the smiles from the faces of those who once dared to betray her for power and the gleam of the crown. Among the fragrant petals lies not just a message, but the first official move in their dangerous game. Written in a handwriting she would recognize among 1,000. A single glance at the familiar lines makes her heart skip a beat, awakening memories of the time when that handwriting was her only source of hope. The words, penned by Edwin's confident hand, fall onto the paper with the weight of an oath, confirming that the Grand Duke has already begun carrying out her will in the corridors of the Empire. She freezes in the silence of her chambers, realizing that from now on, every desire of hers will be backed by the might of Gaius's most dangerous blade. The everyday routine of preparing for a public appearance now seems to the lady like an empty formality, for beneath the mask of the flawless aristocrat hides the architect of the coming chaos. Her smile is dazzling and pure, yet behind that radiance lies the icy calculation of a woman who will never again allow herself to be a victim of others' ambitions. These flowers will bear witness to her triumph, the symbol of an exile's rebirth into the Queen of Shadows, whose influence will soon become absolute. Golden rays pierce through the wrought iron bars, reminding her that even in the most luxurious palace she had long remained merely a prisoner of circumstance. But the shadows of the past that once tormented her soul have now become her allies, feeding her thirst for justice and giving her strength for the final push. If I do everything possible? This whisper becomes her mantra, a promise to herself to see the matter through to the end, no matter the cost. She feels the threads of fate weaving together in her palms, granting her control over the lives of those who once considered her worthless. Deep in her mind, the weak little girl who was betrayed still cries out, but the lady she has become will no longer turn toward that cry. She stands on the edge of the abyss, ready to step into it, knowing that on the other side awaits either absolute power or final oblivion. The time for doubt is gone forever. Now she is not merely an exile. She is the judge whose verdict has already been pronounced and awaits only the right moment for execution.